There are three kinds of people in the world: aggressors, victims, and bystanders. Everyone sticks to their role even in a place as small as a classroom. Jin-hyuk often wondered where he stood. My position? Am I the bystander? I'm fine with that. He sat at his desk, clicking his pen and scribbling notes, uninterested in the noise unfolding nearby. Just ahead of him, Kwak Ji-hoon was picking on Bae Young-ho again. Jin-hyuk didn't react. He simply lowered his head and kept writing. Kwak Ji-hoon said, Hey, I watched MMA yesterday and picked up this move. He threw his arm around Young-ho's neck in a tight grip. Another student watching nearby asked, "Show hold?" Kwak Ji-hoon replied, "Yup, that's it. I'll practice it on Young-ho." As the hold tightened, Bae Young-ho began squirming, gagging as his face turned red. The same student chuckled, "Student, up-and-coming pro wrestler." Laughter echoed through the classroom. "Kwak Ji-hoon, Bae Young-ho? Stop squirming. You're not gonna die." One of the students pointed his phone at Young-ho's face. "His eyes are rolling back. I'm recording this." Another student finally spoke up, "Hey, let him go now. We don't want a dead body on our hands." Ji-hoon released his grip and Young-ho dropped to the floor, gasping, coughing, and struggling to breathe. Kwak Ji-hoon said, "Look at his face. Hands down, the ultimate loser champion of Class 3. Another student muttered, "Student, ugh, stop coughing already. Your spit's flying everywhere." Ji-hoon then walked over to Hee-chin, who had been standing silently, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen. "Did you see that, Hee-chin? Hilarious, right?" He casually slapped a hand on Hee-chin's shoulder. Hee-chin turned slowly. "Don't touch me." Kwak Ji-hoon quickly dropped his hand. "Sorry." Hee-chin slipped his phone into his pocket. "I pressed the wrong button because of you." Standing nearby, Kwak clenched his jaw, clearly flustered. In a flash of embarrassment, he turned and struck Young-ho, blaming him out of nowhere. "Young-ho, you messed up Hee-chin's game, you idiot." Bae Young-ho quickly bowed his head. "Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk hadn't lifted his eyes from his notebook, still calmly taking notes. From the corner, Hee-chin glanced around the chaotic room, thinking to himself how ridiculous it all was. So noisy. We have a mock test tomorrow. He returned to his studying, thoughts drifting again. All of them are pathetic. Loud egos, impulsive violence, this immature nonsense is everywhere. It's all so pathetic. Later, in the cafeteria, the place buzzed with students crowding the food counter, grabbing trays, and chatting over lunch. Jin-hyuk sat at a table with 4 classmates, quietly eating. One of them eyed his tray suspiciously and said that he wasn't sure about the beef, asking if anyone thought it might be imported from America. He added that he didn't want to catch mad cow disease. Another student laughed and said that he probably already had it. Their conversation was cut short when someone spotted Bae Young-ho sitting alone at another table, quietly eating his lunch. The same student said that it was Young-ho and wondered aloud if Hee-chin and his crew were getting out of control. Someone replied that they weren't just getting there, they already were, calling them outright gangsters. Another asked if the rumor was true, the one about Lim Hee-chin strangling a freshman-year teacher. A student munching on his food chimed in, saying that just looking at how his underlings clung to him even more after the incident made it seem likely. That's when Jin-hyuk finally spoke up and said that he had seen it. Everyone paused as he confirmed that he saw Hee-chin strangling a teacher. One of them, wide-eyed, asked how. Jin-hyuk explained that it happened when he was taking the trash out to the back of the old wing. He said that the teacher was much smaller than Hee-chin and looked like a fish out of water, flailing and gasping with his eyes rolling back. He said that Hee-chin was speaking, but he had been too far to hear the words. What stood out to him most was how calm and indifferent Hee-chin's face looked, which made the whole scene less frightening and more stifling. Someone then asked why Hee-chin didn't get expelled after doing something like that. Another said that no one really knew, but he thought Hee-chin had been suspended for a while. He added that the teacher's reputation wasn't exactly spotless either, with rumors about him harassing female students. Another classmate agreed and said that after that incident, some kids even started idolizing Hee-chin like he was some kind of hero. Still, one of them said that no matter what, strangling a teacher was the act of a brainless animal. Another student laughed and said that he wouldn't say that to Hee-chin's face though. The boy responded, telling him to shut up, and then asked if people avoid trash because they're scared of it. No, he said, they avoid it because it's dirty. Jin-hyuk chuckled and said that was right. In his mind, he thought to himself that a brat chomping at the bit to trample over everyone was no different than a pile of garbage. Later, during cleaning period, the entire school was bustling with students sweeping floors, wiping windows, and dusting corners with cloths in hand. The teacher called out to everyone, telling them to clean thoroughly and not miss the corners, especially the window frames, saying they had been covered in dust for days and asking who was in charge of them. Jin-hyuk had been assigned to mop the floors and was dragging his mop along the corridor while thinking that mopping was the worst. As he passed by the boys' restroom, he glanced in and noticed Hee-chin standing at the wash basin, busy with his phone. Jin-hyuk stepped in and greeted him with a casual hey. Then he said that he needed to wash the mop and asked if Hee-chin could make some room. Hee-chin stepped aside without a word and Jin-hyuk squeezed in, rinsing his mop in the basin. While doing so, Hee-chin asked if they were in the same homeroom, to which Jin-hyuk confirmed yes. Hee-chin then said that he was in charge of the windows but hadn't cleaned them in days and asked if Jin-hyuk could handle it for him. Jin-hyuk looked at him and asked why he didn't just ask one of his many friends. Hee-chin rubbed the back of his neck and said that they were all busy at the moment. Jin-hyuk said nothing in return, but as he tightened his grip on the mop, his mind drifted back to his classmates' earlier words about avoiding trash, not because it's scary but because it's dirty. Before he could say anything else, Hee-chin's phone buzzed. He answered and said that he was asking if the person on the line had gotten something. Then he told them to come to the old wing restroom and asked if they had a lighter, finishing by saying he wasn't going to do it and calling the person an idiot before walking out of the restroom. After school, Jin-hyuk was walking home when he received a call from his father. Seeing the name on the screen, he wondered why his dad was calling and then answered with a hello. His dad greeted him warmly, asking if he was on the way to test prep. Jin-hyuk told him no, that he had just finished study hall and was heading home. His dad said he was thinking of coming home for the weekend. Jin-hyuk responded with a simple okay, wondering in his head if his dad wasn't in the middle of a filming schedule. His dad then asked if he had heard from his mother lately. Jin-hyuk replied that she had called recently and wouldn't be flying in this month. Just then, someone on his dad's side called out, addressing him as director and asking him to take a look at something. His dad told Jin-hyuk that he had to get back to work and would see him this weekend. Jin-hyuk ended the call and sighed, thinking that even though his mom could be a pain, it was somehow more awkward with his dad. Still, he figured he had it easier than other kids who lived with both parents. What he really wanted was to grow up and enjoy real freedom. He longed for his own place and his own car. To reach that goal, he had to get into a prestigious university. His daily cycle of school, study hall, test prep, and bed felt like a tiresome loop, and he wondered just how many more days he would have to repeat it. He thought to himself that he was really starting to get sick of it. Around that time, an inexplicable sense of emptiness took hold of Jin-hyuk, and he found himself vaguely waiting for something, anything, that could jolt him out of that dull numbness. Whether it turned out to be good or bad didn't seem to matter. As he walked along the road toward home, lost in thought, he suddenly spotted Hee-chin. An older man had grabbed Hee-chin by the hair with one hand, and in the other, he held a bottle. The man was yelling furiously, shouting that Hee-chin was a brat and how dare he give him attitude. Without hesitation, the man struck Hee-chin hard across the face, leaving a red mark, then raised the bottle in the air while continuing to scream at him. Jin-hyuk froze in place, staring at the scene in front of him, his mind catching only one clear thought: Lee Hee-chin. Along the shortcut from school to home, there was a quiet residential block marked for development where empty houses stood lifeless and old furniture lay scattered around like remnants of a forgotten world. It felt like a junky arc, and amidst this backdrop played out a startling scene. The man yelled at Hee-chin that the only way to knock some sense into him was by hitting him, then slapped him again, shouting that he was just like his mother, with no respect at all. Hee-chin slowly raised his face, locking eyes with the man, which only made him angrier. The man smashed his bottle on the ground and shouted at Hee-chin to go get him booze, calling him a rude little brat. After that, he opened the door and stepped inside his house. Hee-chin wiped his face and stretched his neck, and that was when he noticed Jin-hyuk standing nearby. Jin-hyuk quickly turned away and kept walking, trying to shake the image off, thinking whether Hee-chin would be okay getting beaten like that. But then again, maybe it would make him quieter in class. Just as he tried to push the thought aside, Hee-chin yanked his backpack from behind and said that he saw what just happened. Jin-hyuk hesitated and admitted that he did see it. Hee-chin told him not to tell anyone. In his mind, Jin-hyuk thought he wasn't planning to. Hee-chin went on, telling him to think about Young-ho, asking if he didn't feel sorry for him getting kicked around every day, and warned Jin-hyuk to keep his mouth shut unless he wanted the same. Jin-hyuk stayed silent, but deep down he thought, forget you, I don't care if you get beaten to death. Late at night, Jin-hyuk sat at his desk, studying his lecture notes, his eyes narrowing in frustration as he thought that he had gotten 2 quotients wrong, something that wouldn't have happened if he had just been a little more focused. After finishing up, he leaned back and scrolled through his gallery. As he did, his mind wandered to Lee Hee-chan. He recalled a past conversation where one of his classmates mentioned that Heechan's family supposedly made something go away with money. Another student had asked what they made go away, and the reply was that it was his expulsion from school. They said he always wore expensive clothes and shoes. One of the students asked where the other heard that and joked about whether he was interested in Heechan or something. Another added that Yojin said Heechan was popular with the girls because he was good-looking. Thinking about all that, Jin-hyuk figured that Heechan didn't seem like he came from a rich family at all, though he didn't think it was really any of his business. Since then, school carried on as usual, the class humming with the same energy, the bullies doing what they always did. In front of everyone, one of them shouted that a punch to the gut was coming and told the others to hold Young-ho tightly. He mocked him to suck in his gut. Jin-hyuk sat quietly, watching it happen again, thinking that someone always had to be the sacrifice to sustain peace in the classroom. The bully threw a punch straight into Young-ho's stomach, and Young-ho ended up vomiting from the pain. The bullies burst out laughing, shouting that it was disgusting and calling him a gross piece of shit. Jin-hyuk winced at the noise. Lim Heechan, who had been casually scrolling on his phone, looked up and said that Young-ho's vomit had gotten on his shoes. Young-ho, still crying, apologized. Another bully scolded him, saying look what he had done. Young-ho offered to get the shoes cleaned, but the bully shoved Young-ho's head toward the vomit and told him that went without saying, calling him a moron. He told him to drop his head and apologize. Jin-hyuk glanced over at Lee Heechan, wondering why they all acted like that. At that moment, Heechan turned and locked eyes with him. Jin-hyuk immediately dropped his gaze, thinking that their eyes just met. One of the bullies pushed Young-ho's head harder and mocked him, saying he wasn't doing it right and should apologize in Japanese instead. They sneered that Young-ho was good at Japanese and told him to say it. Through his tears, Young-ho said while crying, Heechan-sama, gomi nasai, Heechan-sama. Jin-hyuk's lips curled into a twisted smile as he replayed the earlier scene in his mind of Heechan getting beaten by his father. He thought sarcastically, Heechan-sama, my ass? But before he could get lost in that thought, he felt a presence standing near him. It was Heechan. Heechan asked what his name was, guessing if it was Ji-woo or Jin-sung. Jin-hyuk snapped out of his thoughts, slightly startled. Heechan asked again if he wanted to play with them. Jin-hyuk didn't answer. Heechan looked at him and said that he was always watching and laughing, so he must want to join in on the fun. He told him, let's play together. Jin-hyuk nodded calmly and told them, no thanks, you guys go ahead and play. But Heechan sat down in front of him and asked why he had laughed at them. Jin-hyuk replied that he hadn't laughed at all. Kwak Ji-hoon walked over and asked Heechan if there was a problem. Heechan casually pointed to Jin-hyuk and said that he was laughing at them. Jin-hyuk tried to protest, saying he didn't, but the boy cut him off and snapped, accusing him of being disrespectful. Jin-hyuk stayed silent and simply stared at him. That ticked the quad off, and he barked at Jin-hyuk to lower his gaze. Heechan chuckled at the situation. When the quad asked what was so funny, Heechan stood up and said to forget it. The quad seemed confused and asked if they weren't going to beat Jin-hyuk up, but Heechan told him to go ahead and do it himself if he wanted, then added they should grab the lighter and head out. Before leaving, the quad glared at Jin-hyuk and warned him to watch out. Jin-hyuk clenched his fist, thinking bitterly that if they ever messed with him again, he wouldn't hold back. In the next class, the teacher was writing on the board, explaining that they would definitely see this type of question on the test, so everyone needed to pay close attention. He demonstrated how to substitute into the expression root of x squared plus 2 and walked them through the calculation. When class ended, the teacher reminded them to complete all practice problems before next time, and to return their mock test results once they received them. The students responded with a collective yes sir, then packed their things and started heading home. As Jin-hyuk walked alongside one of his friends, the friend brought up what happened earlier. He said he'd heard that Heechan and Kwak Ji-hoon tried to start something with Jin-hyuk. Jin-hyuk confirmed it. The friend asked why they would even do that, and although Jin-hyuk had an idea, he simply said he didn't know. The friend said it made sense if it was Bae Young-ho they were messing with, but if they started picking on Jin-hyuk too, he shouldn't just put up with it. Jin-hyuk reassured him that he wouldn't. The friend muttered that they were just a bunch of idiots who'd amount to nothing when they grew up. Jin-hyuk agreed, saying their lives were bound to be trash. In his mind, he thought to himself that they were nothing but a couple of washed-up bullies who peaked in high school. He wasn't going to let them get to him. As they parted ways, his friend called out that he'd see him tomorrow. Jin-hyuk waved back with a yeah, see you tomorrow, then turned onto the shortcut he usually took home. It was creepy at night, lined with old, empty houses, but it saved him 10 minutes between school and tutoring. He thought those 10 minutes were useful. He could answer about 8 English questions in his workbook in that time. As he walked, he suddenly heard a cough from inside one of the abandoned houses, the kind with no door. The sound stopped him cold. He turned his head toward it, wondering what the hell that was. Goosebumps ran down his arms as he thought about who could be inside such a deserted place. He crept up quietly and peeked inside. What he saw startled him. It was Lim Hee-chan, sitting there, bruised and clearly beaten. Jin-hyuk's heart skipped for a second. He'd been expecting something creepy. But not this. He figured Hee-chan must have gotten beat up at home again and ran away. A small part of him wanted to help, but he quickly turned his back and told himself it wasn't his problem. He walked away, thinking he didn't care. Best to just ignore it. When Jin-hyuk entered his house, the sound of his mother's voice greeted him, telling him he was home. His eyes widened with surprise as he asked, "Mom, didn't you say you wouldn't be visiting Korea this month?" She replied that there had been a change in plans. He nodded and said he understood, but added that Dad was supposed to come home this weekend. His mom didn't answer and instead said she was going to wash up, brushing past his question. Jin-hyuk just sighed and thought, whatever, let them figure it out. He lay on his bed, feeling drained, thinking he still needed to review the language question he got wrong earlier. Just as he started to relax, a knock came at the door and his mom called out, asking if he was asleep. He got up and said no. She opened the door and told him they were out of coffee and asked if he could run to the convenience store to grab some. He hesitated for a moment, thinking he'd just showered, but he replied, "Okay," and got ready to head out. On the way back from the store, carrying the coffee, he noticed how cold it had gotten at night. His thoughts drifted back to Lim Hee-chan. He wondered if Hee-chan might still be at that empty house. The idea started as simple curiosity but morphed into something else. In a strange way, he admitted to himself that it had been almost entertaining to see Hee-chan, who always acted so tough, beaten, and vulnerable like that, standing in front of the house again. He looked around and thought, this was the place. He stepped inside quietly, checking to see if Hee-chan was still there. It looked empty. Of course, he thought, why would he still be here? But as he turned to leave, a voice behind him said, "Hey!" Jin-hyuk spun around, startled. Lim Hee-chan was standing there, watching him. He asked what Jin-hyuk was doing and why he was wandering around that area so late at night. He quickly came up with an excuse, saying he was just out on an errand and decided to take a walk. In his mind, he admitted even he wouldn't believe a story like that. Hee-chan looked at him with suspicion and asked, "An errand? What kind of errand brings you to this neighborhood?" Then, noticing the bag in Jin-hyuk's hand, he asked what was in it. Jin-hyuk replied, "Coffee and water." Hee-chan asked if there was any alcohol. When Jin-hyuk said no, Hee-chan snatched the bag from his hand with a casual bummer and pulled out the water bottle, chugging it down without hesitation. As Hee-chan drank, Jin-hyuk's eyes were drawn to the bruises covering his neck and hands, deep, ugly blotches that hinted at pain beneath the surface. Hee-chan handed the now empty bottle back to him and said, "Here." Jin-hyuk thought he drank all of it. What a jerk. Then Hee-chan told him to go, waving him off before turning and disappearing into the shadows of the alleyway. Jin-hyuk stood there, watching him walk away, and though the alley was too dark to see clearly, he could make out the bruises spread across Hee-chan's skin. He wondered if Hee-chan was just barely holding back the pain as he walked. Jin-hyuk thought about how lucky he was his parents might be distant, but at least they never laid a hand on him like that. Later in class, the teacher began taking attendance. Looking at an empty seat, he asked, "Who's missing there?" One of the students replied, "It's Hee-chan." The teacher frowned, repeating the name, "Lim Hee-chan? He's absent again?" Jin-hyuk thought to himself that Hee-chan hadn't returned to school since that night. Some girls nearby started whispering. One asked how many days it had been. Another replied, "More than a week." They said he might not meet the attendance requirement if this keeps up. Then one of them sighed, "I hope he comes back tomorrow. I need my daily dose of eye candy." Kwak Ji-hoon and his gang were still tormenting Bae Young. They grabbed a marker and scribbled, "I am loser," across his face, laughing as they shouted, "You look so handsome, Bae Young." Their jeers didn't stop there. One of them mocked, "You look like a freaking retard." Kwak leaned in and warned, "You're dead meat if you wipe this off." Then the bell rang and the teacher stepped into the classroom, announcing class has started. Everyone be seated and turn to page 98. Let's start from the third paragraph. But he paused when his eyes caught an open locker overflowing with garbage. His expression tightened as he asked, "Whose locker is this?" Kwak quickly called out, "It's Bae Young's," then slapped Bae Young's shoulder, adding with a laugh, "Jesus, Young Ho, how can you be so filthy? You seriously need to clean up." The teacher frowned at Bae Young Ho's face and asked, "And what happened to you?" One of the bullies jumped in, saying, "We played a game earlier and Bae Young-ho lost. That's his penalty. We told him to wash his face, but he was too lazy." Bae Young-ho, still trembling, muttered, "Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Park." The teacher didn't respond right away, but after a moment said, "Try and get along with your friends, and clean up after yourself." Bae Young-ho nodded, "Yes, sir." During break, Jin-hyuk and his friends were sharing snacks. One of them commented, "Don't you think Kwak Ji-hoon's taking things too far now that Hee-chan's not around?" Another agreed, "Yeah, those people don't know where to draw the line." Jin-hyuk added, "Even our homeroom teacher didn't say much." His friend shook his head, "Isn't that messed up? You'd think a teacher would do better. Then again, why don't you step in?" Another chimed in, "Why would I want that kind of trouble?" Someone asked, "But seriously, why isn't Lim Hee-chan coming to school?" One of them shrugged, "Who knows? Maybe he's just not in the mood." "Why? You worried about him?" Jin-hyuk said nothing, sipping quietly on his drink. Later, walking home alone, Jin-hyuk thought about going to that same deserted street where he last saw Hee-chan, but he didn't. The next day, the classroom door opened, and finally, Hee-chan returned. Kwak shot up from his seat and called out, "Hey, Hee-chan, where have you been? I thought something happened to you." The girls in the class were taken aback by Hee-chan's return. Jin-hyuk, watching him, thought he looks fine. But when Hee-chan's gaze met his, Jin-hyuk instinctively looked away. Hee-chan walked over and casually tapped Jin-hyuk on the shoulder. Surprised, Jin-hyuk turned around. Hee-chan simply said, "Hey," then continued walking. Jin-hyuk, puzzled, muttered, "Hey, Kwak," watching the exchange, scoffed, "What? Since when do you say hey to him?" Hee-chan didn't even look back as he replied, "What do you care? Stop questioning every little thing." Jin-hyuk was left confused, unsure what had changed or why. The teacher was calling out names for attendance. 21. Co Jin-hyuk? She asked, and Jin-hyuk responded, "Here." She continued, 23. Lee Jae-hee? 24. Lee Seo-kyung. Both students confirmed their presence. Then she said, 25 Lim Hee-chan? But the classroom remained silent. Everyone looked around, surprised by his absence. Kwak Ji-hoon quickly said he's sick today. He can't come to PE. The teacher nodded and replied, "Tell him to bring a note from the nurse's office later," then moved on with the roll call. Out on the field, Jin-hyuk's friend nudged him. Everyone brought their jump rope. "We're starting with 100 skips. You forgot yours." Jin-hyuk admitted, "Yeah." His friend called him an idiot, and Jin-hyuk just muttered, "Shut up," then jogged over to the teacher. "Miss Lee, I left my rope in my locker. May I go get it?" The teacher frowned. "Where's your head at? Be quick." "Yes, ma'am," he answered, heading back to the building. As he pushed open the door to the empty classroom, he saw Hee-chan sitting alone at his desk, scrolling through his phone. Hee-chan glanced up as Jin-hyuk entered. Without saying anything, Jin-hyuk walked over to his locker and started searching for his rope. Then he heard Hee-chan's voice. "Hey," he called. Jin-hyuk paused, turned slightly, and replied, "What?" Hee-chan stood and said, "See me for a second." Jin-hyuk turned fully now, already thinking, what does he want this time? Hee-chan handed him a pain relief patch. "Can you stick this on my back? I've tried and tried, but I can't do it myself." Jin-hyuk frowned. "Why don't you ask one of your friends?" Hee-chan's voice dropped. "They don't know I get beat up at home." For a moment, Jin-hyuk didn't say anything. Then Hee-chan pulled off his shirt, revealing his back covered in dark, painful-looking bruises. Jin-hyuk stared, thinking, that looks bad. He asked, "Where do you want it?" Hee-chan pointed, "This side." Jin-hyuk moved to press the patch. "Here." Hee-chan winced and said, "No, a little higher." After some adjusting, Jin-hyuk finally got the patch in place. "Did that hurt?" he asked. Hee-chan chuckled faintly. "Go easy on the patient, would you?" Jin-hyuk looked at the remaining patches. "You want more?" Hee-chan nodded. "Yeah. Do all of them." Quietly, Jin-hyuk applied each one, carefully avoiding the worst bruises. When he was done, Hee-chan pulled his shirt back on. "Thanks," he said. Jin-hyuk blinked, surprised. "What?" "I said thanks," Hee-chan repeated. Jin-hyuk didn't know how to respond to that. This version of Hee-chan was unfamiliar. He finally muttered, "Sure," still confused by the sudden shift in behavior. As Jin-hyuk walked out toward the school ground with the rope in his hand, he couldn't shake the thought, "I do feel a little bad for him." Later that night, he sat quietly at the dinner table with his mother. Neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the clinks of cutlery and the distant hum of the city. After a while, Jin-hyuk finally broke the silence. Come to think of it, Dad didn't come home last weekend. He said he would. His mother asked, did you talk to him? He nodded, yeah. How's his filming going? She asked, and Jin-hyuk replied, I don't know. She scoffed, him and his artsy films that never bring in a penny. When is that foolish man going to stop? That's how he blew through all of his mother's inheritance, you know? She reached for her wine glass and took a long sip before continuing, thank God you're not trying to follow in your father's footsteps in the art racket. After a pause, she asked, everything all right at school? Yeah, he replied. She went on, a friend of mine has a son your age. Apparently, he got into huge trouble for being involved in school violence. There's a chance he might get expelled. She narrowed her eyes a bit and asked, is there bullying going on in your class too? Jin-hyuk answered honestly, yeah, there is. His mother didn't look surprised. Don't get involved. Even if you feel bad for the kids being bullied, don't try to help them. And stay away from the bullies too. Not that I need to tell you that you're not the kind of kid who'd mix with that kind of garbage. As she said that, Jin-hyuk couldn't help but picture Hee-chan's bruised body, his quiet voice, and the pain in his eyes. It all came flooding back. But he forced a calm expression and said to his mother, don't worry. That'll never happen. After coaching, Jin-hyuk's friend asked if he was heading straight home. Jin-hyuk nodded and replied, yeah, why? His friend said he was planning to stop by the bookstore to grab the English workbook they had been told to buy. Jin-hyuk responded, oh yeah, I'll do that another day. With a wave, his friend said, okay, see you tomorrow then. Jin-hyuk smiled and reminded him school's off this Saturday. His friend laughed, oh right, see you next Monday then, and they went their separate ways. As Jin-hyuk walked home, he reflected to himself, Mom's gone back to America, so I'll be on my own from today. She stayed longer than usual this time, almost 2 weeks. She won't be back for at least 4 months. And Dad probably won't show up anytime soon either. Honestly, I like it best when it's just me. He popped in his earphones and listened to music as he walked. That's when he heard the sound of girls laughing nearby. One girl was singing playfully, I said stop. The other teased, oh come on, just show me one, pretty please. The first girl laughed nervously, seriously, stop. She suddenly lost her balance and stumbled backward, bumping right into Jin-hyuk. She quickly turned, startled, and said, I'm sorry. Jin-hyuk answered calmly, oh that's okay. Her friend called out, Summer, watch your step. Jin-hyuk glanced at the girls, and that's when he saw him Hee-chan. His eyes widened in surprise. Hee-chan met his gaze for a second, but Jin-hyuk quickly turned his face and started walking away. Then he heard a voice behind him. Hey, Hee-chan called out. One of the girls asked, you know him? Hee-chan replied, yeah, I'll be back in a second, and walked over to Jin-hyuk. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Hee-chan said, hey, why are you acting like you don't know me? Jin-hyuk glanced at him. What? Do you need something? Hee-chan raised an eyebrow at the cold response. Jin-hyuk brushed Hee-chan's hand off and added, if not, I'm gonna go. But Hee-chan stopped him. Wait. Actually, yeah, I do need something. Jin-hyuk paused. What? Hee-chan hesitated, eyes shifting slightly before he spoke. Can I borrow some money? Jin-hyuk's eyes widened in disbelief and he said, what? Are you shaking me down? Hee-chan quickly replied, no, I'm gonna pay you back right away. Still unsure, Jin-hyuk asked, you've got a bunch of friends over there. Why don't you ask them? Hee-chan gave a crooked smile and said, they're all broke. But you? You're loaded. You live in that fancy place, the Brown Palace, right? Jin-hyuk's eyes narrowed. How did you? Hee-chan grinned, bingo. Just a wild guess, seeing you pass through my neighborhood. That's why you've been scared lately, isn't it? Jin-hyuk stayed silent, tense. Hee-chan continued, anyway, I'm not trying to take money from you, I swear. It's just, my dad's gonna come home drunk again tonight. And if I'm there, he'll beat the hell out of me. That's just how it is. If I hadn't run into you, I'd be sleeping outside tonight. Hearing that, Jin-hyuk's mind flashed with images of the bruises covering Hee-chan's body. His expression softened as he reached into his wallet and pulled out some bills. How much do you need? He asked quietly. Hee-chan replied, like 20,000 won. About 17 bucks. Jin-hyuk handed him the money and said, you don't need to pay me back. Hee-chan looked surprised, why not? Jin-hyuk shrugged, it's just fine. But inside, he was thinking, because I don't want anything more to do with you. Then he spoke again, but can you not talk to me at school? People might get the wrong idea and it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to tell anyone about your dad. So don't worry about that. Hee-chan's expression changed, a shadow falling over his face. He gripped the money tighter and said, so that's it, huh? Do I look like a beggar to you? You feel bad for me, so you hand me some cash and expect me to just disappear? Like you're doing me a favor. Jin-hyuk's breath caught as he saw the frustration rising in Hee-chan. I didn't mean it like that, he said. I was just, but Hee-chan cut him off, thanks for the money. But don't treat me like some charity case. The tension lingered between them until Hee-chan pulled out his phone. Give me your number, he said. Jin-hyuk blinked. Why do you need my number? Hee-chan didn't wait for a reply, holding his phone forward insistently. With no other option, Jin-hyuk gave him the number. Hee-chan punched it into his phone, then said, I'll pay you back tomorrow. So come out when I call you. Jin-hyuk was in his room studying when his phone buzzed. He answered with a simple hello, and from the other end, a voice said, Hey, meet me. I'm in front of the karaoke place near the four-way intersection. Without responding, Jin-hyuk hung up. A short while later, he arrived at the karaoke spot, spotting Hee-chan waiting there. Hee-chan waved and said, Over here. Jin-hyuk approached, asking, So, the money? But instead of answering, Hee-chan grabbed his wrist and said, Let's go inside first. Jin-hyuk pulled his hand back, startled. What? Go where? But Hee-chan ignored his protest and dragged him into the karaoke hallway. Hey, wait, let go of me. Jin-hyuk finally shook himself free and demanded, What the hell, just give me the money. Hee-chan, still unfazed, replied, My friends are in here. Hang out with us for a bit and open the door to one of the karaoke rooms. Jin-hyuk's voice rose, What? I don't want, but inside were a bunch of unfamiliar faces. One of them grinned, Hey, Hee-chan. Oh, you brought someone? Hee-chan introduced, Yeah, it's my classmate. Another chimed in, You guys are in the same homeroom? This is the first time Hee-chan's brought a friend from high school. Jin-hyuk glanced around, puzzled. These people don't go to our school. Hee-chan's probably known them since middle school. Hee-chan asked one of them for some water while Summer, the same girl who bumped into Jin-hyuk the other night, looked over and said, Hey there, we ran into each other yesterday. Turning to her, Jin-hyuk replied, Oh, hello, thinking, it's that girl from last night. Summer smiled and patted the space next to her. We're the same age, so just relax. Okay? Sit here. Hesitant, Jin-hyuk sat down beside her, his mind spinning. What have I walked into? The others were singing loudly, laughing, having fun. Summer handed him a drink. Here, drink this. Jin-hyuk took it, murmured thanks, popped it open, and started drinking. While gulping, he kept glancing at Hee-chan, who was absorbed in his phone. What's he up to? Are they gonna gang up on me? He thought, already planning, if anything weird happens, I'm recording everything. Irritated, he took another long sip. What a waste of time. I need to get home and finish my practice. Finishing the can, he barely set it down when Summer offered another. Were you thirsty? Drink this too. So, if you're in the same homeroom as Hee-chan, that means you go to COIL High, right? Jin-hyuk nodded as he took the second can. Yup, that's right. Hee-chan, watching their interaction, abruptly stood up. One of his friends called out, Where you going? Hee-chan simply replied, Bathroom. Hey, it's our turn to sing when you get back. His friend shouted, but Hee-chan didn't respond. He just shut the door behind him and disappeared into the hallway. Jin-hyuk glanced at the door. He's gone. This is my chance to slip out, he thought. Just then, one of the boys handed him the karaoke remote and said, Hey, Hee-chan's friend, don't you want to sing something? Jin-hyuk politely declined. I'll pass. Another guy chuckled and said, You look like a really smart, good kid. How's Hee-chan friends with someone like you? A third added, Right? You two are like oil and water. I honestly thought Hee-chan would end up a loner with zero friends in high school, but it turns out he managed to snag himself a totally normal, nice guy. I'm glad. Jin-hyuk, mid-sip from his drink, thought to himself, They think Hee-chan's a loner? He's got a whole gang of bullies following him around, guys like Hwa Chi-hoon. Suddenly music started playing. One of the girls asked, Who picked this next song? The tune was Kissing You. One of the boys raised his hand and said, Oh, this is me and Sung-hoon's Come On, No More Girl Days song. The two of them burst into song, laughing and goofing around. Jin-hyuk watched for a second, then thought, But these kids, they don't really seem like a bad crowd. If anything, they look pretty normal. He stood up quietly and said, I'm gonna use the bathroom. Summer looked up and smiled, Sure, turn left and it's right around the corner. As he stepped out into the hallway, Jin-hyuk muttered to himself, Honestly, I'd rather just let go of that 2000001. But as he turned the corner, he stopped in his tracks. Hee-chan stood there, sipping a drink. Where you going? He asked casually. Home, Jin-hyuk answered firmly. Hee-chan took a sip and asked, Why? Jin-hyuk replied, getting annoyed. What do you mean, why? Why did you drag me here in the first place? You said you were gonna pay me back. He tossed his empty can into the trash. Hee-chan leaned against the wall. Summer asked me to bring you when I told her I was meeting you. Jin-hyuk asked, Summer? Who's that? Hee-chan said, The girl with the short hair. The one who was sitting next to you. I think she likes you. She said you're cute. Jin-hyuk blinked, blushing slightly. What? Hee-chan smirked, are you cute though? I'm not sure. His gaze lingered a moment too long on Jin-hyuk's face, eyes narrowed playfully. Embarrassed, Jin-hyuk brushed past him and muttered, forget it. I'm going home. As he walked away, Hee-chan called out, I'll come with you. Jin-hyuk paused and glanced back. I was heading home anyway, Hee-chan said with a shrug. Jin-hyuk and Hee-chan walked side by side, the silence between them growing heavier with each step. Neither said a word, their steps falling in rhythm but their thoughts far apart. Eventually, Hee-chan broke the silence and asked, by the way, what's your name? Jin-hyuk glanced at him and answered, Seo Jin-hyuk. A pause followed again, stretching uncomfortably before Jin-hyuk spoke up, can I ask you something? Hee-chan looked over, curious. Do I make you uneasy? Hee-chan blinked, confused. What? Jin-hyuk continued, the way you've been trying to chat me up and stuff. Is it because you're worried I might go around telling people about what's going on at your home? Hee-chan raised a brow. Am I? Jin-hyuk said, his voice calm. I'm just saying if that's the case, you don't need to worry, I'm not going to tell anyone even if you don't keep tabs on me. Hee-chan let out a quiet breath. Yeah, you don't seem like the gossipy type. But still, it's just embarrassing. Jin-hyuk said, what is? Hee-chan hesitated, then admitted that my dad beats me. No one's ever found out before. It's embarrassing as hell. Jin-hyuk lowered his eyes, regretting ever witnessing it. Maybe I should have just looked away that day, he thought. Hee-chan muttered, mean drunk. He didn't used to hit me this much though. It's gotten worse lately. Jin-hyuk asked quietly, why do you just take it when he hits you? Hee-chan gave a small, unsettling smile. Because what if I can't stop once I start fighting back? Jin-hyuk stared at him. What? Still smiling, Hee-chan said, I might end up killing him. Jin-hyuk's eyes widened. Are you being serious? Hee-chan shrugged. Of course not. He's way stronger than me anyway. He's been doing manual labor his whole life. He's got that old man strength. Jin-hyuk thought for a second. Manual labor? He didn't look like the office type anyway. They kept walking when Hee-chan suddenly said, anyway, my dad might be a piece of trash, but I'm not some broke kid. I just forgot my wallet yesterday. My mom's rich, okay? So don't treat me like I'm a bum. Jin-hyuk took in his words. I don't treat you like a bum. But in his mind, he wondered, if your mom's rich, why are you stuck with that drunk? Maybe he's just saying that to impress me. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit him. Ugh, too much soda at karaoke. He stopped walking, pressing a hand to his stomach. Hee-chan noticed and turned back. What's wrong? Jin-hyuk asked, his face strained. Is there a bathroom nearby? Hee-chan looked around. Nope. You can come to my place if it's an emergency. Jin-hyuk hesitated, thinking this is so embarrassing. Later at Hee-chan's place, Jin-hyuk stepped out of the bathroom with a quiet sigh of relief, thinking to himself how close that was. As he moved through the room, his eyes caught a wall filled with photos of Hee-chan and his mother, their smiles bright and natural. From the other room, Hee-chan called out, asking what he was doing, and Jin-hyuk quickly replied that it was nothing, thanking him for the use of the bathroom and saying he'd let himself out. Hee-chan, sitting on the bed, told him to wait so he could give him the money he owed and opened his wallet. As he did, Jin-hyuk noticed a shelf packed with DVDs and wandered over, commenting that Hee-chan must really like movies. Hee-chan responded with a grin, saying he did, and when Jin-hyuk asked if he'd bought them all, Hee-chan explained that he picked some up when local rental stores closed down. Jin-hyuk scanned the titles, surprised by the unexpected sight of Hee-chan, and stopped at one DVD, pulling it out. Hee-chan suddenly appeared beside him, leaning close and saying that the movie The Sound of Water was by his favorite director. Jin-hyuk looked at the cover and asked, your favorite director? To which Hee-chan replied that he'd never met anyone who'd even heard of the film, that it was an indie movie barely anyone knew. Jin-hyuk then said he hadn't seen it either. When Hee-chan asked how he knew about it, Jin-hyuk looked him in the eye and said, the director is my dad. In shock, Hee-chan accidentally threw his wallet from his hand and shouted, he's your dad? Jin-hyuk nodded and replied, yeah. Hee-chan covered his mouth, still stunned, and said, really? To which Jin-hyuk confirmed again, yeah, really, quietly observing that he had never seen such a look on Hee-chan's face before. He added, look, even our names are similar, Seo Jin-hyuk, Seo Ji-myung. But how did you get a hold of this DVD? Regular rental stores wouldn't carry it. Hee-chan explained that his cousin used to work for the director and got him a copy. Curious, Jin-hyuk asked why he liked the movie so much. At first, Hee-chan didn't answer, but then said that the movie portrayed people who live strange, broken lives in such a beautiful way, and that while some characters overcame their trauma, others were consumed by it. He said he liked the feeling that all those lives, no matter how messy, were being acknowledged. Jin-hyuk admitted that he didn't really understand, and Hee-chan handed him the money, saying, don't sweat it. Just take it. Jin-hyuk thought to himself how strange it felt to hear such heartfelt praise about his father's film from someone like Hee-chan, especially when he himself had never even seen the movie. Hee-chan asked why, surprised that Jin-hyuk hadn't watched his own father's work. Jin-hyuk replied that he didn't have much interest in movies and barely had time to study. But in his mind, he confessed the truth. He had always been curious about his father's films, but their family didn't own any DVDs, and since they weren't commercial films, they were hard to find online or in rental shops. He remembered how, once in middle school, he had found out where his father's movie was showing and even went to the theater, but after pacing around outside, he got too nervous and embarrassed, so he went back home. Out loud, he asked, "Could you lend me this?" And Hee-chan, confused, asked, "Why?" Jin-hyuk told Hee-chan that he was curious about what kind of movie it was, and Hee-chan, surprised, said it was his own dad's movie, so he should at least have one copy at home. Jin-hyuk explained that he and his dad didn't live together and weren't that close, so it would feel weird to ask him directly to show his own film. After a short pause, Hee-chan agreed and said he could borrow it. Later that day, back home, Jin-hyuk put the DVD into the player and started watching. His initial impression was that it was boring, very boring. The story followed a woman who moved to a seaside town and a man who had lived there all his life. They grew closer and shared their pain, almost falling in love, but in the end, the woman left and the man remained by the sea. That was it. The sound and visuals were muted, the dialogue was minimal, and Jin-hyuk thought, no wonder it didn't sell. He remembered what Hee-chan had said about the film portraying strange lives in beautiful ways, some people overcoming trauma, others getting consumed by it, and how it felt like those lives were being acknowledged. But Jin-hyuk still didn't get it. He wondered how Hee-chan saw so much depth in something that felt so plain. That night, after crawling into bed, he realized he hadn't finished his study plan for the day, but he was too tired to care and fell asleep instantly. The next morning at school, while checking his locker, he saw Hee-chan walk in. Their eyes met briefly before another classmate, Kwut, approached Hee-chan from the side and asked if he'd seen the picture he sent last night. Hee-chan said he hadn't. Kwut insisted he should, excitedly sharing how Song-yoon got into a fight with a staff member at the internet cafe. But Hee-chan didn't respond and just walked past Jin-hyuk without a word. Jin-hyuk felt a bit hurt but then reminded himself of what he had told Hee-chan earlier, asking him not to talk to him at school because people might get the wrong idea, and it made him uncomfortable. He wondered if that was why Hee-chan was ignoring him now. With that thought lingering, he decided he would return Hee-chan's DVD on his way home later. On his way home, Jin-hyuk stopped by Hee-chan's house and rang the bell, wondering if he was in. After a moment, he rang it again, and finally, the door opened with Hee-chan stepping out casually asking what's up. Jin-hyuk held out the DVD and said he wanted to return it. As Hee-chan took it, Jin-hyuk hesitated and asked if he had any more of his dad's movies. He wanted to watch another one. But as he stood there, lost in thought, debating whether he should keep borrowing things from Hee-chan noticed his silence and asked what was wrong. Jin-hyuk stayed quiet, and Hee-chan, scratching his head, said he needed to get back inside since he was in the middle of making ramen. Jin-hyuk quickly replied that it was fine and he could leave, but Hee-chan paused, then asked if he wanted some ramen. Jin-hyuk's eyes widened at the sudden offer, and Hee-chan added that he could come in if he wanted to. Jin-hyuk stepped inside and followed Hee-chan to the stove, where Hee-chan explained that he'd been hungry and made enough ramen for two, though he didn't think he could eat it all by himself. He set the dish down along with 2 plates, chopsticks, and spoons, and they both sat on the floor to eat. Jin-hyuk thanked him, and Hee-chan just replied with a casual "sure" before asking how the movie was. Jin-hyuk admitted it was boring, and Hee-chan laughed, saying he figured he'd say that. Jin-hyuk added that he almost fell asleep and asked what there was to even like about the film. Hee-chan explained that he'd felt the same at first but couldn't stop thinking about it, which eventually led him to watch more of the director's films until he started to grasp what the stories were trying to convey. Then he told Jin-hyuk that he was lucky to have someone like director Seo Jin-myung as his father. Jin-hyuk disagreed, saying his dad just burned through the family's money making obscure films no one watched. Hee-chan said he was still envious since his own dad was just an alcoholic scumbag. Jin-hyuk replied with a dry comment that he couldn't argue with that. Hee-chan then asked if he wanted to watch something else after they ate, suggesting another one of his dad's films. Jin-hyuk glanced at the clock. It was already 6 p.m. and he had academy by 7. He debated for a second, then said yes, figuring one day off wouldn't hurt. After finishing the ramen, Hee-chan loaded a DVD into his CPU and told Jin-hyuk the disc was in. As Jin-hyuk fumbled with the mouse, Hee-chan guided him, pointing to the correct player. When it didn't work right away, Hee-chan leaned in, placing one hand on Jin-hyuk's shoulder and the other over his hand to press the right button. Jin-hyuk couldn't help but feel something in that moment, their faces close, the warmth of Hee-chan's hand. But just as quickly, Hee-chan backed off, grabbed a stool, and sat beside him. Jin-hyuk teased him, saying he had no sense of personal space, and Hee-chan smirked, asking what he meant. Jin-hyuk brushed it off and told him to forget it. As they watched the movie, Jin-hyuk thought this one was actually more interesting than the sound of water. Just then, someone knocked loudly on the door. Jin-hyuk turned around as the loud banging continued, someone shouting angrily from behind the door. Hee-chan's expression changed, a flash of fear crossing his face as he muttered that the dad must be drunk again. When Jin-hyuk asked what to do, Hee-chan placed a firm hand on his shoulder and told him to go out the back door. He led him there quickly, and Jin-hyuk hesitated, asking what would happen to him. Hee-chan replied that he couldn't just let the dad scream outside all night, that he'd handle it. Assuring Jin-hyuk he'd be fine, he closed the door behind him. From the other side, Jin-hyuk could hear the man's voice, laced with rage, yelling questions laced with profanity and anger. Something crashed inside, and Jin-hyuk stood frozen, wondering if Hee-chan was just standing there, taking the blows. Another loud noise followed, and then more yelling, accusations, threats about running away like his mother. Jin-hyuk slowly reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the emergency number. His mind raced. Would calling the police make things worse? Would he be dragged into it as a witness? What would his parents say when they found out where he'd been? What would people at school think? He stared at the screen, then pressed cancel and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Without looking back, he turned and ran, each step feeling heavier than the last. On his way home, he kept telling himself it would be fine, convincing himself this wasn't anything new for Hee-chan. This wasn't his problem to fix. Since then, Hee-chan had been absent from school again, and it had already been 2 weeks. During homeroom, the teacher looked around the class and asked if anyone had been in touch with him. When he turned to Kwak Chi-hoon, the boy replied that Hee-chan hadn't picked up his calls or responded to messages. Sung echoed the same. The teacher moved on, announcing that the venue for the upcoming field trip had been decided Gyeongju and said participation forms would be handed out in the afternoon, requiring a parent's signature. The girl sitting beside Jin-hyuk muttered that Gyeongju sucked, but Jin-hyuk wasn't paying attention. During break, as the classroom buzzed with chatter, a girl approached and said she had just heard something strange. Her friend asked what it was, and she explained that the reason Hee-chan hadn't been coming to school was that he had gotten badly hurt. Jin-hyuk's eyes widened at the words. The girl continued, saying a friend from class 8 claimed to have seen him in Incheon, face completely messed up like he'd been beaten. She added that her friend had been visiting her grandmother when she saw him. The other girl questioned if it was really Hee-chan, but the first shrugged and said maybe it did seem weird. She joked that maybe he was trying out for a gang or planning to drop out of school to work on a shrimp boat. The girls burst into laughter, one saying it would be a shame since he had such a good-looking face. Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk sat quietly, thoughts spiraling. Incheon? Why would Hee-chan be there? It could just be a baseless rumor, but the part about the injuries, could it really be him? It was driving him crazy. At the academy later, while the teacher discussed sentence structure, Jin-hyuk couldn't focus. He kept wondering if he should have called the police that night. When the teacher called his name, he didn't respond until his classmate nudged him. Snapping out of it, he apologized, and the teacher asked him to stay after class. When everyone else had left, she handed him his graded quiz, and Jin-hyuk noticed he had made 4 mistakes. She said those weren't the kind of errors he usually made and asked what was going on. Reminding him that he'd be a senior soon, she told him this wasn't the time to lose focus and urged him to pull himself together. Jin-hyuk nodded, quietly replying that he understood. On his way home, Jin-hyuk's mind was a mess. The memory of Hee-chan getting beaten, the gossiping girls, and the disappointing quiz score kept swirling in his head. He thought, I'm all over the place. I can't focus. God damn it. I can't afford to be distracted like this. Why did I get involved with Lee Hee-chan in the first place? Just then, a group of 3 boys came walking from the other side of the street. One of them bumped into Jin-hyuk. Are you kidding me? Jin-hyuk muttered under his breath. The boys stopped, one of them laughing, saying to his friend, did you hear that? This little twerp says, kidding me? High schoolers sure are scary these days. Jin-hyuk sighed, thinking great. Then, the one in the hoodie paused, squinting. Wait, I know him. The hood shifted slightly, revealing Hee-chan's bruised face, mostly hidden under the shadow of the hoodie. Jin-hyuk's eyes widened. Hee-chan? The guy asked, oh, he's your friend? Hee-chan nodded, I'm gonna go talk to him real quick. I'll be back. His friend waved him off. Jin-hyuk immediately asked, why haven't you been coming to school? Hee-chan answered, because I don't feel like it. Jin-hyuk didn't hold back. Don't give me that. It's because of those bruises, isn't it? Hee-chan gave a small, tired smile. You already know, so why ask? Jin-hyuk pressed further. Why don't you stand up to him? Why let him hit you? Hee-chan looked down and said, I don't know. When he raises his hand, I freeze. Everything feels heavy and empty. I just shut down. Jin-hyuk asked, what does that even mean? Hee-chan gave a dry smirk. It's whatever. Changing the subject, Jin-hyuk asked, who were those guys you were with? Hee-chan replied, my middle school sunbaes. One of them's got his own place, so I thought I'd crash there, but he said no since his girlfriend moved in. He looked frustrated. My dad's probably gonna come home drunk again tonight, and I've got nowhere to go. Internet cafes and saunas don't allow me now since they know I'm a minor. Jin-hyuk asked, don't you have any friends who could let you stay? Hee-chan shrugged, they all live with their parents. It'd be awkward. Jin-hyuk paused, then said, then come to my place. Hee-chan blinked, surprised. What? Jin-hyuk repeated, I don't live with my parents. You can stay with me. Hee-chan frowned. Why? Do I look like a charity case to you? You pity me. Jin-hyuk looked him in the eye and answered, honestly, yeah. You are pitiful. I pity you. How could I not? Hee-chan stared at him, stunned. But Jin-hyuk didn't give him time to argue. So come on. Let's go.